Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely stream deck. For more information about the stream deck, the link is in the description below.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Apex Online Racing broadcast booth. My name is Brayden Hill, and I'm here alongside my co-commentator and broadcaster, Niclas Domino. We're here today at the famed Mount Panorama Circuit here in Australia. We've gone down under this week for the 6th round of racing in the 12th season of the Apex Online Racing GTE League. Nick, I'll bring you in a little early today. What do you expect to see here with only about 20 entries in the fields this week?
Well, I'm expecting carnage. Bathurst, as we are going around here, the mountain, is such a difficult track and probably the most difficult track these drivers are gonna face. This is a track where, you know, the hair on the chest really grows. Drivers who are not prepared and have not practiced is gonna show. If you make a mistake, it is a concrete wall that you will hit, and you will have, you know, a headache because you will just damage your car completely. So I'm expecting to see, from what I have seen out there, a lot of mistakes as well. This is a difficult track, as we see them now, the pro drivers coming up the hill. We have seen some close times, but this is, you know, again, an extremely fun track to drive around.
Indeed, certainly a lot of fun to hot lap, and even more challenging to race side by side, as we see everyone's favorite German on the broadcast coming down the hill. Just over the crest of the hill and to the left-hand side. Now back to the right for what is one of the most challenging stretches of racetrack on the planet. Now, we only have a few entries in the pro class this week, I believe 4 or 5, and a total of 23 drivers in the field for today's race. We've talked before a little bit about the attendance or lack thereof. So how do you think the number of drivers we have here will affect the quality of the racing?
Well, I think that, you know, less drivers means that there are less people you can go into. So I think that will definitely have an impact. But, you know, I think we will still see a lot of drivers going into the wall. We'll just go on our German fellow here for a lap around Bathurst as he's coming down. Start finish straight now, starting his lap. This turn 1 is really important to brake late, but not too late, because as you can see here, the curb on the outside is really high. You can really hit that and get traction out of it, but you have to be careful, because if on the inside it's really high as we're going down the one of the straights here over the crest. And here you can really brake. You can brake later into this right-hander onto the mountain than you think, because it's banked and it's still going uphill, so it helps with the car go down. This is probably one of the most tricky braking zones. Left corner and then a hard left. This one helped you, but the other one is really difficult to get the balance right here over the crest. It's so easy to lose the rear end, but the traction control of these cars really help going up the hill, right, left, and this 2 left corners here. Get it all the way to the right, and then hit the apex all the way up to the wall, as we see here. This next corner is really difficult. The outside curb is so high, coming down over the sky, down to this really difficult braking zone. You need to almost hit. You need to kind of, you know, turn in towards the wall. Otherwise, you have turned in too late on the way down and into the elbow here down. This so important to get the traction out of here completely right, because you have this long stretch where you are on the throttle for such a long time. This is probably one of the few overtaking opportunities, so you almost set your car up for this part into the kink here and into the chicane with, and this have again these high curbs that you really need to be careful of. Long right corner at the exit here is so difficult to get the traction down, and now into the last corner, and it's such a difficult track, as we have talked about and we will say throughout this coverage, because it really is, and that is a 158.4 for our pro driver. And let's see if the Shepherds can do anything, or the Gordon looks like he's been going out a little bit late, so I think Gordon is on his out lap again, and we will have Shepard seeing if he can get that pole lap.
Well, we only have 2 teams represented at the top of the field in the pro category. The first is the car you see here, that is Venom Ultima. Teammates Andy Gordon and Mike Skeppers in those red, silver, and black liveried Ford GTs. And then 2 other Fords at the top of the charts. Actually, it looks like Taj Edwards has made the change to the BMW. He was in the Ford last week, though with the balance of performance adjustment, I guess he's decided to make his move over to that front-engined M Sport powered BMW. Now we're taking a look here at our current pole sitter, Mike Weiskopf Seeker, or as we call him, our favorite German, because his last name is so damn hard to pronounce. Now, currently at the top of the field is Mike, and his teammate Taj Edwards currently scored in the 4th position, 2nd in class. We just saw Mike Skeppers come across the line, or actually, no, that's Andy Gorton who came across the line to start his lap. I stand corrected there.
We are looking at Skeppers.
Oh, that is in fact okay. Yeah. So he's starting what is his 2nd lap then?
Yeah, I think he's hit the wall probably.
Yes, probably. After seeing how much he was crashing in practice, I wouldn't be surprised. But after that dig, 0.3 of a second, the gap currently between Mike and Owen Blythe, who is currently in the 2nd position and 1st in his class. Lesky Seleznev, 2nd in class and 3rd overall. So 2 Pro-Ams on the top 3. Then Taj Edwards, Mike's teammate, the Jamaican driver in the Ford this week, currently in the 4th position. Kevin Onk takes 5th, and it looks like Mike Skeppers may have just aborted his lap, or was that just him going a little bit slow there in Forest Elbows? I think he was just a little bit slow there in Forest Elbow. Now going down the Conrad Straight, headed towards the chase. And as we ride along here with Mike, we'll watch just how much commitment's required to get into the chase quickly. Hard under the brakes on the 150 marker. Pull it to the left-hand side.
I think Andy here, it's Gordon. I think Andy has made a mistake. He's being quite slow here. Yes, you're not having these 2 drivers, shut up. So we will go. This is Mike Shepherds, and Shepherds has had 2 amazing sectors onto the mountain, and now coming down off it. He was not too fast at the beginning of the lap, so let's see what this lap can be, if he can challenge for that P1 in not only class but also overall. Let's see what it and he will be P2, actually only 29 thousandths of a second. That's close, especially on a track where pole is so important as it is here.
Indeed, and track position is super important here, simply because of the fact that there's really only one racing line. You can force your nose in some of these more challenging areas of the course. We did see in the Bathurst 12-hour a couple years ago, Matt Bell make an incredible move to the inside on the Forest Elbow, entering Forest Elbow and onto the Conrad Straight, that ended up winning that race over the final year of the V12 iteration of the Aston Martin Vantage. But now looking at simply the only a few of the cars represented here in iRacing. These are, of course, GTEs, the Bathurst 12-hour run among GT3 spec cars. The difference, to put it lightly, quite simply, is just downforce and more aerodynamic advancements that these GTE cars have. As we see, qualifying is now finished, 25 minutes elapsed. We did start the broadcast a little bit late, so we see Taj Edwards finish his final lap, but does not go any faster. Mike Skeppers still on his final lap. He's set a purple third sector, but has been slower in every other sector thus far. We'll see if he's able to improve at all. 0.2 of a second was the difference between himself and the other Mike. And both in fourth at the moment, 2 forwards at the top of the charts. We'll see if Mike is able to improve at all in the next couple of corners. He does go green in that last sector, not quite purple. They'll come across the line here in just a moment. Let's see. Or actually, that is Gordon who came across the line. Gosh dang it, that's the third time I've done that.
Yeah.
Peppers coming into Murray's corner at the end of the lap and heads back on the main straight, a little bit straight. Hard left-hand corner, not able to improve. Or actually improves just a touch, but within only 1/10 of Mike for the pole. So that will just about finish everything up. We'll see if we can get some qualifying results here in just a moment, but rather uneventful qualifying session. Nick, your thoughts?
Well, what we're seeing is definitely that the pro-amps are kind of mixing and matching in between both the amps and the pros. This is a really important qualifying, and you will see once we get driving here, because if you're a pro driver, Andy Gordon definitely is, for me, that would have been a letdown. He was struggling out there to get that lap time in, so he's now starting behind almost the entire pro-am field, which he has 3 pro-amps in between him and Ty for that P3, and again, both Tryon and Owen in between him and the front 2. So if he wants anything out of this race, he needs to up his game, because it's gonna be such a difficult thing to overtake onto the mountain. You only have, as we saw, really, going down and going up onto the mountain. But these cars, the GTs have a lot more both mechanical grip and downforce compared to GT3, so they are easier to get around, which is also why we see so much faster times. I think we did in the 12-hour race about 203s, 204s. So, and these drivers are doing 158. So the GTs are really fast. But I think we have some qualifying results for you all here. We can just get it up.
Well, we will run through the grid then here. At the top of the charts, Mike Weisskopf Seeker in the Fuga Sim Sport number 122. Then the Venom Ultima entry of Mike Skeppers, hailing from the Netherlands. Owen Blythe down in the 3rd position, the first of the Pro-Am category drivers in the V3 Racing Black Corvette. Then Taj Edwards, the Jamaican who has made the move to the BMW M8 GTE, also from Fuga Sim Sport. So that is a 1st and 4th qualifying, strong from them. Oleski Seleznev, privateer entry, number 5, the Tide branded Corvette, currently in the 5th position. 6th, Kevin Oak in the Phoenix Racing Club Eggshell BMW. Marvin Sluman, the Hyperion Racing Orange, the first of the Hyperion entries in that purple, yellow, and white Corvette. Andy Gorton, second of the Venom Ultima entries, followed by Becca Gabrielson in Hyperion Onyx Black. After that, Tristan Koning, Gunners Raz Gals, and Dennis Cartier. That is your top 12. Now, a little bit further down, we have Merlin Cooper, the V3 Racing Gold AM entry, followed by Stephen Broomfield in V3 Racing Silver. Chris Yardley in Hyperion Racing RTX. That is the Porsche with the interesting toothy grin on the front end of it. Victor Mateos, the other teammate to Chris Yardley, also in the Porsche 911 RSR. After that, Leonard Graff, followed by Jamie Smith. Cohen Van Eyck with a little bit less than stellar qualifying performance compared to what we're used to seeing out of him in the Hyperion Racing orange car. Then Dennis Meisner in the Wraith Energy Racing car. Thomas Kuhn in the V3 Racing Gold in 21st. Then Ate Kapanen in Comrade Gaming Teal, one of the few Comrade Gaming entries that has returned. And John Hallowell, who accidentally registered for the session in the incorrect car and will not be able to race today.
Yes,
So,
that is a little bit of, that's sad news, because I think he would be one of the top drivers here with the pros.
He always is one of the top drivers, as the iRacing pace truck has made its way to the left-hand side off onto the pit lane, and the leader is already gone. So, off to the races. Now the Ford GTE clear out in front. The top four all single file. Owen Blythe makes a move to the inside, now trying to make an attack on Mike Skeppers for P2. He currently holds the third position overall, as you see them scampering about in the background, coming down the mountain straight and towards the hill. They'll enter Quarry in just a few moments' time to the right-hand side. They'll dive in there. We'll see if anybody tries to make a move, a little bit of side-by-side action. Andy Gorton making a move to the inside of Kevin Onk. Oh, and Andy's gone sideways. He took too much of the curb contact with one of the Pro-Am drivers. That was one of the Hyperion Racing cars. So that has sent him all the way back to the back of the field. Unfortunate start for Andy Gorton. I think that was Marvin Sluman, whose right front corner made contact with the rear end of the Ford GT, and he's slow, majorly off the pace of suspension damage for that Corvette C8R, and he pulls off to the right-hand side of the track and will retire. Serious damage to the right front. You can see a lot of carbon fiber there, and parts just strewn about the right-hand side of the track, as you see Andy Gorton actually go by there. Hopefully Gorton didn't have too much damage from that. Not sure if he made contact with the wheel. Now back to the front of the field. The lead still held by the Fukusim Sport driver in the Ford GT, and they're all tied together between the top three there. Weisskopf Seeker, followed by Skeppers, followed by Blythe. That's Ford, Corvette, and then BMW. Taj Edwards, the Jamaican, not too far behind Owen Blythe as they go down the Conrad Straight for the first time, headed towards the chase. All in a slipstream battle here. Two pro drivers, followed by a Pro-Am. They head into the chase for the first time. We'll see if anybody makes any mistakes here. Hopefully they will all get through cleanly. And considering how tight it is there, that could have been a lot worse, that incident with Andy Gorton. We'll see if we can get a replay of it a little bit later. Now looking at Merlin Cooper from Austria, the number 366, now riding on board with Andy Gorton. You can see nothing he could really do there. Looks like he took a little bit too much curb to the inside line. And these curbs here at Bathurst, incredibly unforgiving, especially there in Quarry. And then he is able to recover. Doesn't look like too much damage, so hopefully wasn't too much of an issue. But just the way that he got hooked from the right front of Marvin Sluman there just did a lot of damage to that Sluman car. Now we're looking at Andy here. Looks like Sluman actually pulled off the side of the racetrack only to, or actually no, is that his teammate there? Yeah, that is Cohen Van Eyck behind him. I got a little bit confused there. We're looking there. Cohen Van Eyck looks like he made a mistake. Yes, went off track coming out of the chase and headed towards Murray's corner there. So he had to go slow, lost a few positions there, but now has recovered and falls in line behind. Oh, and we see another incident from Kevin Onk. Looks like he's made a mistake in the cutting. And this is just another testament to just how much difficulty there is this track.
Must be having a car on the side.
Huge damage there. Looks like one of the V3 Racing cars involved. And I was just about to talk about Broomfield about to try to make a move there. You can see the damage to Kevin, and it looks like Tristan Koenig made a mistake. Oh, huge mistake. All there. He comes back on track and making contact with one of the V3 Racing drivers. That is the question.
No.
Looks like they all made it through. Oh, not quite. Who was that? That might have been. Who was that? That might have been Thomas Coombe who made contact with the wall there. He made it.
No,
through,
it's Merlin Cooper.
cleanly.
Merlin has been.
That's unfortunate.
And that's the thing about this track, when the walls are so unforgiving, and yeah, we see the cars they're not pretty after hitting the wall, and it was also such a small incident that we had at the beginning, but due to the track, that car is crapping. Yeah, that is race over for Koenig right there.
That's really unfortunate, and to your point, Nick certainly, Merlin made it through the incident itself clean, didn't make contact with Koning, but getting offline just enough that it put his car on a trajectory for that wall to the right-hand side as we see Mike Skeppers continuing to put the pressure onto Mike Weisskopseeker at the front of the field. That is the 122 from the 196, both in the pro class, and then the leader currently in the pro-am category, Owen Blythe, leading by about 4.5 seconds over Lesky Seleznev. So this lead group of three seriously pulling away from the rest of the field, giving them a run for their money. Now, to run through some of the top 10 drivers, we have 2 Fords, followed by 2 Corvettes, then a BMW, Ferrari, and a Porsche. I think that's about as the most competitive we've seen those 2 manufacturers at all this year, with Baka Gabrielson and Dennis Cotier currently leading the AM category. Now, we did see, it looks like, I'm not sure if that's an error on my end, but it looks like we had an incident with Taj Edwards. He looks to have fallen out of the race. Tristan Koning and Merlin Cooper have done the same. Yeah, it looks like the Fugasim Sport BMW has made some hard contact with the wall. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but it looks like it was coming out. Oh, it looks like the damage was already happened there. So probably coming over the top of the hill.
Oh, that's Tristan.
It looks like some issue. That's Tristan.
Did Taj perhaps get some? Him. Let's see if Taj hit, because that's just right after that. So let's see if he's getting a little bit of a knock here. Tristan is backing off. No, I can't really see where, because
that must have been another. That must have been an issue coming through McPhillamy Park towards Skyline, I have to imagine.
Yeah, probably.
So now,
well, it happened before that, right?
On the grass.
Ooh,
I think I have to get on the grass, a blink of the lights from Owen, his teammate in endurance events. So I'm sure good fun between the two of them, blinking of the lights from the Corvette, the GTE Racing branded C8. Now he gets deep into the draft, weaving back and forth a little bit, saying hi to Mike there. Going to try to use the slipstream to get to the outside here. Mike wisely defends to the inside line. They're going to go side by side through Quarry. Owen makes the clever decision to back out there. But this battling is allowing Mike to pull away at the front. The Fugasim Sport orange and green branded, or sorry, the orange and red branded Fugasim Sport Ford GT currently at the front of the field. These two going at it. Of course, Mike, for those who don't know, we look here to replay of Thomas Kuhn. Looks like he's made a mistake coming over the hill through the S's.
Ooh, just a little bit too much. And
but it doesn't look like he hit
anything. maybe let's just take that again from another angle here, because that was, it's such an easy thing to do when you're breaking down here, because you know you're just switching the balance left and right. Ooh,
oh, what a save!
Oh, that's so lucky. Wow.
He blinked out there. I thought he had reset, and I was wondering why, but it looks like he just blinked out there for a moment, but did a spectacular job of saving the car. No damage to that number 379 GTE Racing Gold Corvette. Now we do see a little bit of side-by-side action. Cohen Van Eyck just going straight through the S's instead of trying to make the corner. Looks like he was having some sort of issue. He's got his teammate right there behind him, giving him a little bit of slack. I believe that's Jamie Smith, who he had made the pass on. Let's see. Oh, Jamie taking that curb hard, but only a tap. Only a tap there. Cohen was smart not to try to make the corner there. If he had tried that, he may have ended up making more contact and making that situation even worse. So a very good job there from Cohen to be really heads up and decide to skip that corner there. Now, on the topic of the front of the field, if we can move back up there, that seems to be where the big race is thus far. At the front, the interval, 1.2 seconds for the front for the lead. Then another, barely a car's length between Blythe and Skeppers for third position overall. Seleznev another 3.5 seconds back, currently battling with Gunners Razgals, or actually it's another 3.8 seconds back to Razgals. I stand corrected. The other closest battle there would be for 4th and 5th in the Pro-Am category between Kevin Oak and Stephen Broomfield. Chris Yardley not too far away from that. But at the front, this is the place to be, because these three drivers are absolutely schooling the rest of the field and putting a whooping on them. Nick, what do you think these guys just put in extra practice, or is this the kind of track that just rewards raw skill?
It is a track that really, raw skill. But I also think that these drivers have driven a couple of races around here. They know where the turns are. this is a track that a lot of people either really love or have never ever driven on. Because when you have driven a race around here, you really love it. That for me, there's just really no other way to explain it. But if you have the cojones around here, you really get speed out of it, and I think this is what we see. Also, there have been talks about Owen Blythe and his iRacing in the past. So you know this performance.
He has won top split races here.
Yeah,
at this track in the GT.
So I think also, you know, with the conversations that there have been, that he might be one who should be moved up to these guys' pace, because we have seen Owen really be strong in the past as well, and it's quite a big gap, which we tend to see around here, to be fair, because as people are making small mistakes, it's really difficult to gain that time back. As we're just going back and looking at Schmidt, I think Jamie has had an argument with the wall again on the other side, because he has lost a bit of time now as well.
That's just a clever strategy. Damage.
Yeah, if you get damage on the right, you can get the damage on the left, then it equals each other out.
That's definitely how that works. Now, just ahead of him is Thomas Kuhn, who we saw have a little bit of a moment coming through the S's into the Dipper, and was very lucky to not make any contact. Did an incredible job of locking up the brakes and controlling that car in that moment. Could have been much worse for the V3 Racing driver. He makes his way up the hill. We've seen him get a couple of wins, including last week. Last week we saw Cohen Van Eyck was dominating the race, and unfortunately was a little bit low on fuel, did not fully fuel the car, and Thomas was able to basically just waltz on by him. So that was a pretty impressive job done from Thomas Kuhn, because some may say that it doesn't take skill if you get the hand the win just handed to you. However, you have to be there in order to win that. And Thomas has been someone who's done a spectacular job of just positioning himself exactly where he needs to be to capitalize on the mistakes of other drivers. He might not have the outright pace of some other people, as I think we've just seen Jamie Smith make some more contact with the wall in the background, but
it is a wide wall, and go on.
And that pink car they seem to have swapped. But anyway, Thomas continues to show us time and time again his skill of just being consistent, not having the raw outright pace, but instead being able to capitalize on the mistakes of other drivers, and thus has given him that success. We were talking a little bit earlier, and we see here Stephen Broomfield trying to put a little bit of pressure on Kevin Onk. That's for the 4th position in class there, and not too far ahead of them is Dennis Cartier, the leader in the AM category currently. But we were talking a little bit about Owen Blythe and his category assignment to the Pro-Am category, despite how high his iRating is. I think they were waiting to promote him to the Pro class until they saw the outright results from him in the league in the Pro-Am class, but that hasn't really happened by virtue of just how bad his luck has been. He's had, if I remember correctly, 4 DNFs out of 6 races this season, which is certainly nothing that he would be proud of.
That's a move.
Now mistake in quarry, and it looks like the pass is done. He's very smart to fall in line, not try to make a move back to the inside, coming through the cutting. That is not the place to do that kind of a move. Stephen Broomfield now takes the position into 4th in class. We're looking at going to try to hold on behind. Looks like that car is a little bit squirrely. I don't know if you could see that from your perspective, Nick, but it just looks like that BMW is not nearly as stable as the Corvette, especially coming up the hill through the S.
I agree with you there, and the BMW, for me at least around here, tends to be a car that, you know, in driving is a little bit more unstable with the rear, but that's also due to what the engine is. You know, the balance and the weight is at the front of this car, where it is in the rear of the others. So sometimes when you drive around here, you actually oversteer in all of your corners, because you really want a front that really grips. So sometimes it can look really weird. Also, I would not be the guy who wanted to take that big boy around the mountain, because it is really a big car to get up there.
Well,
but
it is light, but it's agile. It is the
it
lightest of
is,
these,
yeah,
despite how wide of an ass it seems to have.
yeah.
But I should also throw out there that the gap for the lead has now come under 1 second between Mike Wisecop Seeker and Mike Skepper.
Oh, you tried it there. You tried it
Trying it.
there.
I'll keep trying it. You know what? Stefan Comke was nice enough to explain to me what the proper way to pronounce that is, and I'll give it my best because Mike deserves that. But of course, he will always in our hearts be our favorite German. So if we could take a look at that battle at the front of the field, that's actually the closest battle on track, other than this between Broomfield and Onk. And Cartier ahead of them as they come up to the top of the hill. You can see just how close you have to be to the walls to really maximize the speed. And you can see based on the camera angles just how close they're getting to that wall, especially when they go into McPhillamy Park, just how hard they push here. This is a perfect angle to watch as we see them come through the S's, just how hard you have to push into this section. Get as close as you can to the walls on either side. Now through the Dipper, gonna slam the gas back as hard as you can, like you are trying to break the firewall in front of you. Now back hard on the brakes to the left-hand side into Forrest's elbow, back on the gas as hard as possible to get the best run possible down the Conrad straight. Now in the draft of Mike is Mike. And
It's the Mike draft.
Yes, indeed. And it was, for the second week in a row, a Mike and Mike lockout front row. As we see a little bit of an incident here, maybe some smoke coming off ahead, maybe a lockup from Cartier there. We're on board now with Kevin Olk trying to chase down Stephen Broomfield. You can see how effective that slipstream is. We'll see if he makes a move to the inside line heading into the chase. He moves to the right-hand side of the track. Now they're going to throw the cars to the right side, stay planted on the gas, and now hard on the brakes. Kevin, much later on the brakes there, but Stephen, hard
a little bit of contact
on the inside. A little bit of contact, just a little bit of rubbing, but certainly nothing dirty by any means. They stay side by side now, heading into Murray's corner, but Broomfield succeeds the position and has now fallen back in line. He's going to continue to try to attack Kevin as this battle continues to go back and forth. So these are the two closest battles, that for 5th and 6th in the Pro-Am category and that for the lead overall. 0.6 of a second between the leaders currently as they head back through the cutting. This seems to be where Mike makes up the most time in his Venom Ultima Ford. He's very strong through these twisty sections up the top of the hill, but something about that Fuga Simsport Ford ahead in the setup or in the downforce just gives it a lot better speed down the straights, it seems. But Mike with a really stable platform there, continuing to do a great job of staying well within touch of that car ahead of him. Not going to let him go by. Oh, and a little bit of lockup from Mike at the front there. You can see the smoke coming off of those tires coming down the Dipper. The car is kind of unloading before smashing back onto the ground, and he does it again in Forrest's elbow. Certainly hard to take care of the tires here, but with now coming up on 20 minutes elapsed, there's still an hour that they have to make these tires last, and we will expect to see pit stops in around about 15 minutes time. Now we're riding on board with Chris Yardley coming down the hill and into the Dipper.
Ooh, Broomfield just a little bit off there. Yeah, but what we're also seeing, what we're also seeing here, especially through the Dipper and here the elbow, is that the reason why we see this smoke is almost because the tires doesn't hit, so it's just a little bit, so it's not really anything that hurts them. But that Porsche has really some slipstream going here, and I think that's a position to Yardley as Broomfield just slides into the back here, and that's a position that Broomfield just made that mistake going down the hill, and Yardley just pounced it as soon as he went up there.
Indeed, and we're looking at this battle now. Looks like Yardley has made that move. We see Jamie Smith now making yet another mistake. Not a great day for Jamie so far. He's coming down the hill here.
Oh, and that's a hard hit.
That is yet another murder of the front of that BMW. I think he may have decided that it was... Oh, and he's just holding the brake. Very wise there. He could have come across the track to try to get back on course as quick as possible, but was very wise to leave that car where it was and let those other drivers go by. Now we're looking at the battle between Yardley and Broomfield. That battle continues to rage on. Broomfield was actually attacking Kevin not too long ago, a couple of positions ahead, but ended up losing some track position. Looks like maybe he hasn't been able to maintain the pace quite as well as some of the other drivers around him. We ride on board with the right front tire of the German driver, not too far behind that Hyperion Gaming branded Porsche 911 RSR, and he's actually sandwiched in the Hyperion Gaming Porsche. He's the meat in the sandwich there between two Porsches. The first being Chris Yardley, and not too far behind, Victor Mateos, his teammate. Less than a second, or less than 2 seconds, I should say, is the gap between those cars. So 3 cars under a blanket for 5th, 6th, and 7th in class. That battle certainly not going anywhere. And the battle in front of the field now under 4/10 of a second. Now 3/10. Looks like maybe Mike Skeppers is in the draft here. Let's see if we can see what's going on there. This battle has cooled off just a little bit going down the straight. Now we're riding on board with Skeppers here, trying to continue to put pressure on the German ahead of him. Less than 6/10 of a second continues to be the gap. They've pulled away a little bit from Owen Blythe here, maybe 2 seconds or so between them, maybe second and a half even. Cohen Van Eyck trying to put some pressure on Dennis Meisner. That is the yellow Corvette that Dennis is driving. Cohen in the Hyperion Racing Corvette. So those two continue to go at it. The pace a little bit slow, and I would argue that this is a track where, and I'll ask your opinion on this, this is a track where I really don't think there's any other track where the disparity in pace would be greater between the pros and the AMs, because just because of how difficult the track is. The pros are absolutely millimeter perfect lap after lap after lap, whereas the AMs maybe are a little bit slower and having a hard time holding their line.
Yeah, but well, you also have some AMs who've just been driving this track, for years and years and years. The cojones, as I said before, it really is that. But yeah, we will see a big gap. I will say that probably Nordschleife, as we have been on to a little bit early on this year, is probably a bit of the same. But yeah, you are right. But this is also a track where even if you're a bit slower, if you set the car up to be really, really fast down the straight, you can defend against a guy who is maybe even 3 up to 3 seconds faster than you a lap. But if he can't get past you, because there's really not any place you can overtake on top of the mountain, as we see Dennis at the moment going, because it's so tight. These drivers are on the limit every single time you're going into a corner up here, because if you're not, you're losing a lot of time. And if you have a car that is just fast down the straight, well, then they won't be able to overtake, as we're just seeing a little bit of a battle. But the battle for the lead is also close, and this is the problem we're having at the moment, where battles are really, really close at the same time. But Shepard doesn't really look to be able to get closer and closer. You mentioned before that he looked, if we're going on board with him actually here, if I can find it here, yes, he looks really fast up on the mountain, but he doesn't really seem to be fast down the straight, and that's that's a problem if you are not out leading.
I'd have to guess that the reason for that is probably down to the setup. I was in the paddock with Mike a little bit earlier before the race started, and he was discussing just adding more wing onto the car. His original setup in practice had very little wing in the rear end, and he was saying that he was having a hard time controlling it, especially over the hill. He was struggling down the mountain, whereas on the faster sections he was absolutely rapid. So I think this is a difference in philosophy in the setup more so than anything else. I think the 122 Fuga SimSport Ford, the orange Ford that you can see out the windshield here, he has gone with the lower downforce package, so he has to be a little bit more ginger coming down the hill to keep from allowing that rear end to step out. Of course, that mid-engine car still does like to rotate quite a bit, whereas Mike has gone with the more conservative setup in terms of the aerodynamic downforce, which has allowed him to be much faster, much more aggressive at the top of the hill, and has put him in a little bit of a deficit coming down the straights. Now we see here a mistake from Chris Yardley. Oh, hard into the wall. and that's a free position for Broomfield. Does he reset or does he keep going? That is the question here. Looks like he's just holding, waiting for some of the traffic to go through. Yes, and then he moves. So that was from sixth position, I believe, in class, if memory serves me correctly, that he has made that mistake, and that's a driver that we don't see mistakes from often. He's very consistent. Chris Yardley is. But I'd also like to mention, since he is in the Porsche 911 RSR, I'd like to give a little bit of a shout out here to Dennis Cotier, who is currently leading the AM class. I think this is the first time we've seen him lead all season, and this is far and away the best performance we've seen from any of the Porsches this year. We saw the bounce of performance from iRacing, putting them at a rather significant deficit. Now they've made some more balance of performance adjustments, made it a little bit more even, and put the BMW, if anything, at a little bit of a deficit. And that has evened out the field significantly. So you see somebody like Vake Gabrielson currently in the second position, who is in a Ferrari, and then a Porsche leading the AM category. And yes, it is the AM category, so maybe it's not the best representation of the balance of performance, but it is still a significant improvement for those two manufacturers to be leading a category, especially over the group of 3 Corvettes currently in 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Yeah, and the Porsche, you know, what I'm really interested in is to see if they can keep up the pace. The fuel tank is in the front, so that really helps with having the weight and the balance at the front, and really gives you this grippy nose, as I was talking about before. As we're actually seeing Gabrielson going into the dipper, you have to turn in quite a bit before you actually think or that you are there, because otherwise you have turned in too late. But just having that balance at the front will give you the confidence to turn in at the right points. But as these cars are burning fuel, the front will get lighter and lighter, and the balance of the Porsche will shift. One thing that I have experienced when I drove it a couple of seasons ago, especially in qualifying, I was actually faster on a bit of with almost 20-25 liters of fuel in it for a single lap than I were, just putting 5 liters of fuel, because I just missed all of that front end grip of the car. So that's where I think the Porsches could be interesting, as we're seeing Victor Mateus getting closer and closer and closer to Broomfield. And we have seen Broomfield make some mistakes when he's been under pressure around here. So this is going to be interesting, and maybe also one of the closer fights that we have out there. I know the battle for P1, but it just doesn't look like Mike is being able to close that gap in as significant as he needs it to be.
Indeed, and I actually just mentioned and just noticed that Owen Blythe in 3rd position has just ran the fastest lap of the race that last time around. That was a 158.601. So he is continuing to close in on those leaders just ahead of him, who've been going back and forth a little bit. I think Mike Skeppers has been losing a little bit of pace to the German ahead of him, simply because of aero understeer, which, for those who don't know, is a condition where the car ahead causes the car behind to not be able to handle quite the way that he wants it to, because of the dirty air coming off of that orange Ford. And that has actually basically slowed them both down, and just enough that Owen can continue to try to close in on them. Now under 2 seconds, or just over, I should say, 2 seconds the gap between the two of them, and now half a second the gap for the lead. So this battle is certainly far from over, as Owen continues to push as hard as he can to try to catch up to those guys ahead. But it seems like the straight line speed is certainly in favor of those Ford GTs.
And Owen has just put in the fastest lap again on this lap, as we are actually seeing Cartier going into the pits now. This pit lane entry is also one of the, let's say, more interesting ones. It's so easy to either crash or lose time or get a penalty in this pit entry, and we will see when some of the others are getting in there. It's really, really difficult. And a driver that we need to mention, as I said at the beginning, a driver that is not having the greatest race that we have seen is definitely Andy Gordon. Andy Gordon is P3 in the pro class due to Edwards being out and only being 4 drivers. But he is a long way down. He's P9 overall, which is and almost behind the entire. Well, he is behind the entire Pro-Am field, so not a great day. And that Ford also looks like somebody who's been having an argument with the wall.
Well, unfortunately, now Chris Yardley has gone into the pit lane, and I believe that will be a retirement for him in the Hyperion Racing Porsche. So that is yet another of the Pro-Ams who's been taken out. Our retirements thus far: Taj Edwards, followed by Merlin Cooper, Tristan Koenig, Jamie Smith, who finally put that car to bed, and Chris Yardley, who's currently in the pit lane, not quite out, but I would imagine that would be the end of the line for that race car. We're seeing a replay here now for Cohen Van Eyck. We'll see if he makes a mistake coming up here into the cutting, one of the most difficult sections of track, as I said, in the entire world. Oh, just goes wide there. Spins. Will he keep from having any contact? Back it up. Oh, right in the middle of the track. That is a horrible place to be stopped.
Hit him.
Damage. There it is. Doesn't look like Dennis was paying much of any attention. Ended up turning him a little bit further around. Let's see if we can ride on board. Let's see what he saw, if we could. Oh, and it's just blind. There's nothing you can do there.
No, that's the thing about that corner. Yeah, that's the thing about that corner. There's no way that you can see that, and if we can just get it on board again, I just need to see if I can find it here. This is, what he will be seeing. This is what Dennis, and he's also getting hot in, and there's just no way that he could do anything about that. And it's such a difficult place to get stuck, and you're just sitting there as the driver who makes the mistake and being like, oh, I hope that nothing happens here, and the driver who then hits you is like, oh, every time you get up there, I hope there's not a car, and clash. The word car. Let's see if Dennis is getting into pits. No, he's not. We're having a lot of drivers coming into the pits at the moment.
I don't think there's been any damage to the front end of that Corvette. I think he's gotten lucky. It seems like a rather hard attack, but I don't think he's really gotten any horrible damage. We see a couple of drivers now coming into the pit lane. Thomas Kuhn, Dennis Cotier, Victor Mateos, Dennis Meisner, and Leonard Graff and Cohen Van Eyck have all come to the pit lane, though I'll imagine Eyck may have some damage he has to fix. But if you look at the clock in the top left side of your screen, you'll notice we're now past the 31-minute mark, now approaching 32 minutes as we see Owen Blythe coming into the pit lane from the lead of the Pro-Am category. I think this is exactly the window where they want to be to make it to their second stop and have only one fuel stop remaining to get to the end of the race here. And also, I'd like to mention, I'd add on to that, is Mike Skeppers maybe, we're underthinking it, maybe Mike Skeppers is intentionally staying behind his Ford manufacturer teammate here, because every time he goes down those straights, he is using less fuel than Mike is, and that basically puts Skeppers in a position where he could take less fuel on this stop or on his final stop and basically leapfrog the German in the pit lane. So that is certainly a potential strategy move that he could make there. Owen Blythe has finished his pit stop and has now exited the pit lane. Kevin Onk, Gunners Razgals, Stephen Broomfield, and Andy Gorton are all now on the pit lane. As we see, Razgals has now finished his pit stop, and the others are still entering their pit. And this is just an awesome perspective to look back at the Venom Ultima Ford of Mike Skeppers from the rear diffuser of the 122 car. You can see him locking up yet again, so certainly being rough on the tires there, but what an awesome perspective to look back at the Ford GT and just see how fast this track happens.
Yeah, and also just, looking at your competition and looking what they are in the mirror, and with having these headlights being so close to you, and it doesn't. I was coming on board to listen to Shepard's if he was actually lifting. It doesn't sound like it. But now they're both getting into the pits, and this is the pit entry as I was talking about. You know, you actually have a chicane in here in the middle, you know, and then a chicane more. So it's just really almost crashed there.
That was certainly some it's certainly iRacing made its famous crash noise, but I don't know if they've done any damage. It doesn't look like there's even a dent on the back of that 122. I think they've gotten away with it.
I didn't get a on the overlay. I didn't get a contact or a crash, so it doesn't look like it.
Away with it. Look at the front end of Skepper's car is completely clean.
Let's see.
But now the thing that we really need to look at, we'll see if we can get a replay. But right after that, we need to see where Owen Blythe is on track, because he was the first one to come into the pit lane, and we've seen it in past races that undercut actually being quite effective for them. Now we're looking from Vuga Simsport car. We'll see. Oh man, that's gonna be tight. Oh, that's a hard perspective to see. But man, that was close. But I mean, that's
the gearbox. This is the gearbox.
In the perfect and leapfrog him. Oh, this is the perspective to look at. Oh, that is scary in the mirror. Locked up the brakes, did 196, and they've gotten away with it completely. And the gap remains virtually the same. It's like nothing's even happened. And Blythe is now within... he's now lost about a second on that pit stop to the leaders there. He was about 2 seconds away from them when they came into the pits. Now 3 seconds the gap, but another 10 seconds back to Oleski Seleznev.
Yeah, and you know, this is one of the times where, you know, shippers could think about, you know, should have underfueled and maybe get out and just driven away from him. So I would have done that, to be honest, you know, because he's not being able to overtake around here, but he's really piling on the pressure at the moment. The mic battle for P1, he's probably as close as we have seen any time during this race. So this could be the time if he can get the slipstream right. Also, I want to say Stefan said that we're still butchering the German name.
Oh, excellent. Love that. That's perfect. So our German friend currently in the lead. And now Blake continues to put the pressure on, goes to the left-hand side of the track. Will he outbrake him? Looks like they're maybe side by side, not quite able to get the nose to the inside there, but Mike absolutely on the offensive here, going to try to make that move. He definitely tried to take advantage of the slipstream there. That was one of the closest, the closest he's been to making that move there, since he's really only been that close over the top of the hill where you can't make a pass like that. But he's now put himself into a position where he's close enough in the slipstream to potentially make a move there. And yet again, Mike Skeppers has run the fastest lap there. So that was certainly, he had a much faster out lap than Mike did, and has since been able to close the gap to 0.3 of a second. 3 seconds still the gap back to Owen Blythe. He's not able to close it, but look at how much deeper Skeppers goes into the corner than Mike in front of him. And now we'll see if he's able to outbrake him. We were talking, I was talking to Skeppers in the paddock before the race, and he was talking about how difficult it was to control that car on the brakes. Looks like he's sorted that issue out with the settings in the car and with his setup, because he has been incredibly aggressive on the brakes, both on pit entry and now we're seeing it into quarry. But look at how hard they're pushing it there, just throwing those cars around like absolute ragdolls.
It's incredible. And the thing is, you know, he, as you were talking about, that if he are driving with more downforce on that car, that will help the Ford on top, because, you know, I don't want the Ford is unstable with you know, a good amount of downforce on, so with not having a lot, that would have been dangerous. And I think this is what we see at the moment. But he's really piling on the pressure, and he now also needs to think about, all right, how about the tires? You know, is there anything that could be done here? Do we have are my tires gonna overheat, stuff like that? Should I maybe, as we talked about, fuel save and be able to go that lap longer? As he's actually making a mistake, and let's see if he can get into the inside here, outside. Oh, there's not enough room there. That would have been the opportunity for him. He needs to keep on the pressure.
On exit.
That was a hard hit right there, and and not something that is good for the car. But he needs to pile under pressure, because we now see Mike up there making some mistakes, and Shepherds need him to make a mistake, otherwise he will not be able to get that position.
Absolutely. The opportunities to make a pass here at Bathurst, far and few between, so you need to take advantage of every single one you possibly can get. We're looking now at Victor Mateos, and actually somebody spun inside. That was Broomfield who made a mistake. Looks like he actually caught a little bit of the grass on exit there. That's certainly a common mistake. Yeah, it looks like he caught a little bit too much of the grass, lost traction, ended up, slides through the grass. A little bit of damage to the front end, but I don't think anything that will be too detrimental to his performance. He has to get back onto the track as quick as possible, try not to lose too much vital track position, but I think he may have gotten away with that one.
Yeah, but that's also what we see, you know, that iRacing has decided to paint all the ice, you know, green and you know, sandy to look like grass and gravel. It isn't. It is ice. And once you hit that, you just, there's no way that he's gonna stop. But I don't think that it was too much damage, as the Corvette as well is a you know, mid-engine car, so there's no damage to the front of the radiator, as we've seen Andy Gordon really piling on the pressure on Victor Mateus. But I think Gordon is a lap down, so he has really had a horrific race here, and is now just trying to see if he can get back up there. But being a lap down at this point is not what he wanted, and not something that Mateus wants, because Mateus is like, you know, should I let him by or not? Because if Gordon is not, you know, a lot faster, well, then Mateus would just use up his front left or front tires, and maybe even if Gordon makes a mistake, he could have an issue there. But you know, if you let him by, then you don't have all the pressure on, and I think he's looking, yeah, he's just lifting off a little bit there, and Gordon will get that position. So he will now think that Gordon should really get, you know, the foot down and get away from him, otherwise this could cost him in the end.
Indeed, and we're seeing the battle on the lead continue to get closer and closer. Mike Skepper's been a tenth of a second a lap faster each of the last 4 or 5 laps compared to his German compatriot just ahead of him. So that battle continues to stay ever close. We see Victor Mateos a little bit behind Dennis Contier, who's the first car ahead of him. Dennis, you can see actually to the left-hand side of your screen with a little bit of splitter damage on the right front, probably from some contact with some of the curbs to the right-hand side. Now, we'd like to thank those of you who are watching with us on the Apex Online Racing Sim Network. This broadcast is brought to you by Elgato Stream Deck and by Hype Energy. Again, this is Brayden Hill, currently broadcasting alongside my producer and fellow idiot, Niclas Domino.
Thank you.
Now, we're here at Bathurst Mount Panorama. This is the 6th round of the AOR GTE League, and only 23 entries this week. So since we have acquired a preach to, please come out and race, because this racing, I mean, the battle for the lead, we're 43 minutes into the battle for the lead, is less than half a second between the top 2. I don't see how you can get any better than that. And now, also worth mention is Owen Blythe's continuing to do a great job in the 3rd position overall, so we could very well end up, or I would say we're almost guaranteed to have a Pro-Am on the overall podium this week, which is, I think it would only be the 2nd or 3rd time that we've had that happen so far this season. You see just in the background that bright Tide-branded Corvette C8R. That is Oleksiy Seleznev. We'll talk about him a little bit. He's about 6 seconds, 6.5 even behind Owen Blythe. He's currently 2nd position in the Pro-Am category. He's the one of the few privateer entries, hence the Tide branding on that mid-engine Corvette C8R, the number 202. Oleksiy Seleznev hails from the Ukraine and is he's been the mainstay in the series several seasons now. We don't see many mistakes from him, and he's just been having a quiet but very consistent race, and I wanted to give him a little bit of a shout-out for that, because there have been a lot of incidents throughout the field. He's done a spectacular job of staying out of it. So too is Gunners Russ Gals a little bit further back, currently in the 3rd position. He's another 12 seconds back from Oleski, so he's still coming up through the cutting, I would have to imagine here. So that is 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of the Pro-Am category, I should say. Now we're riding on board Mike Skeppers from the Netherlands. You can see on board here, following that bright orange branded Ford. That is Mike, our good German friend, whose last name I will never, ever be able to pronounce. Just 2/10 the gap between the two of them, and they're actually coming up on some lap traffic here. Cohen Van Eyck in the number 318 is only 3.5 seconds ahead of them. They've been closing absolutely rapidly. Dennis Meisner not too far then ahead of that. So they're going to be dealing with a little bit of lap traffic here, and I have to imagine that that's going to have a big impact on the battle for the lead. It's only been a 1/10 of a second every lap. The difference between these two drivers. Mike has been consistently, Skeppers that is, has been consistently about a 1/10 of a second fast. That last time, 2/10 of a second the gap between the two of them, a 1:59.9 for our German friend, and a 1:59.7 for Skeppers, 2 minutes 0.4 for Owen Blythe. So he continues to fall off of the pace of these two leaders, who now start to stretch their legs and show exactly what they are made of. This is absolutely the best of the best in the pro category. We've lost a few of our regulars, including Alex Bennett and Martin Nedelik at the front of the field, but still, these drivers continue to stay dedicated to the series.
Meisner! No!
Oh, that's horrible. Looks like Meisner had an issue coming out of the cutting, and there was nothing they could do there. Damage to the front end of the 196. Oh, that is absolutely horrible. Let's ride on board with the 122 car coming through there, see what he has seen coming through the cutting. Oh, there's just nothing he could do there. That was exactly what happened. Oh, major damage to the front end of both of those cars.
That is
almost an absolute repeat of what Van Eyck did to Meisner just a few laps ago. Van Eyck had a mistake in the exact same spot, ended up spinning. Meisner had nowhere to go. Oh, absolutely. That was absolutely nailed it. And actually, it looks like the contact with Skeppers basically boosted him back forward.
That was a lot of damage between these two drivers, and the question is if they are able to continue or if they need to pit. As we are seeing Shepherds now getting onto the outside, I think our German Mike is having too much damage here.
Yeah, the front end of the 122 looks absolutely destroyed there, even exposing that front bay of where the engine would be in a front engine car. Looks like Mike, the 122 car, he will continue on, but certainly does not have the pace he once had. The 196 now takes the lead, comes across the line here, and he still has damage as well. They've each run 2 seconds slower than they normally have been running, and Owen Blythe now closes the gap, 3.3 seconds there. The question is, will this damage be enough? Could we see a Pro-Am take the overall win here at Mount Panorama?
I think we could, but you know, that 122 car, it looks like a Ford that has, you know, answered the question, does my ass look fat in these pants, wrong. You know, just completely smashed that front end. And the question now is, you know, if these drivers are having required repairs, because if they have, they need to take it next time. Then iRacing will not allow them to get out there with too much damaged cars. So they could be able to just, you know, go on without having any issues. You know, not having the meatball flag, but there still might be required repairs. And yeah, Owen Blythe is, you know, looking good. And the phrase is, you know, to finish first you have to finish. And Owen Blythe and actually Selesnev as well, you know, they have just been managing their own race and not made any mistakes, and just kind of, you know, slowed down a little bit, but being safe out there.
And I mean, imagine putting yourself in the shoes of Meisner there. A simple mistake that anyone could have made, just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and ended up basically, so far, he's basically destroyed Mike's race, and Skeppers now takes the lead. Not quite as much damage, but they are both certainly well off of their original pace. 2.6 seconds, 2.5 now, the gap between Blythe and our good German friend here. And I think it's only just a matter of time before that overtake will happen. Now, the question is, how long can Skeppers hold off Blythe once they get closer to the end here? And I'm sure they'll both take the opportunity to get some damage repaired on their next fuel stop. But I really think this could be an inevitable win for Blythe if he's able to keep it clean for the rest of the race. As you see Blythe in the background there, flash of the lights for Cohen Van Eyck, that he wants to get by, and he wants to get by now.
Yeah, but if you look at the lap times here, Shepherds actually were only a tenth slower than Blythe, and I think the German Mike here in Number 122 has, well, he has not only damage at the front of the car, he also have damage at the rear of the car. So, he's really struggling at the moment, as we see out there. He was doing 2 minute 1, and that's 1.5 2 seconds slower than what I have done before. So that will really the car is getting unhappy to drive and unstable, and if there's anything you don't want around here is an unstable car. It's just death sentence. So, and he's really pushing, almost hitting the wall again, and they're just looking at who's in the middle. I think right behind him, that's Andy Gordon, and I think Gordon has been into a pit. Yeah, Gordon has been in for his second stop as well. So he's right here.
Is he only, how many laps down is he then? Is Gordon's only 1 lap down? If he could somehow make the fuel strategy work, he could actually be in competition for maybe a top 10 here. If he makes this strategy work right, it's unlikely, but it's absolutely possible. As we see now, Owen Blythe within 1.2 seconds of Andy Gordon, with 1.6 of our good German friend just ahead. So that gap continues to close faster and faster. But Mike Skeppers still running 159.9s. The thing is, he was running 158s before. So this certainly is not what he wants to see out of that car. But at least 3 to 4 tenths per lap, the loss of pace there. So we see Andy Gordon very cordially allowing Owen Blythe to go around the left-hand side, heading into Quarry. That is the V3 Racing Corvette, the C8, the mid-engine car that recently was added to iRacing. You see him going through the cutting here, and you can now just see he's got his eyes locked on the target here. I don't see any better motivation here, just seeing that bright orange Ford ahead of you and knowing this is exactly what I have to do. And you have to imagine that he knows now exactly what is going on at the front of the field. He's been told by his crew, by his teammates, exactly what's going on in the front of the field and exactly what the target is. So he will have to absolutely push the pace here to try to catch up to Mike Skeppers. That gap has not closed quite as fast as it has between Owen and the German here. 3 seconds now, the gap between Mike and Mike. And that actually is rather significant, because that indicates that Skeppers really hasn't fallen off all that much. And Blythe hasn't been able to close in too much on Skeppers. Could we see a 1-2 finish between the past teammates?
Well, as you know, it might be, and I think a lot of where the 122's damage is, of course, the front looks horrific and really, really bad. But I think it's really that the diffuser damage, that is really where a lot of the grip at the rear is coming from, as well as the rear wing. So that car will be so unpredictable, and that's really what is losing your time, as Shepherds is actually going under 2 minutes there, and it's still out there, but Blythe is not allowed to lose too much time here. So we could be, we really could be, but when, as you said before, when you can see that car that you're chasing, you can see it is a little bit, damaged, is a little bit hurt, you really go in for the kill, and having that carrot out there, and this car, looking like a carrot as well, it's really helping you. So he's just getting closer and closer, and you go a little bit faster, even though, you don't know where you find the speed, but once you see that car up there and you know that that's the position that I can take, you just go a little bit faster, and that's incredible. And it's a feeling that if you do race yourself and know, and if you don't do sim racing, you know, it's like, you know, what are you doing? You know, get onto it. It's such a fun thing, you know.
You spend thousands of your hard-earned dollars.
Well, you can do it for cheap, you know. You really can. And you know, you can find a cheap wheel. We had, I do not recommend this, but we did have a driver, Mr. McPhil, but Mr. Phil is also nuts. He's the Scotsman. You know, driving with the controller, but it can be done, as we're just seeing Owen Blythe going for the dive in here, and Mike is not really defending that too much. I think he knew that was, you know, just timed, you know, and he's now pitting.
Coming into pits. Well, this timing is rather significant because we are now within the window that they can make it to the end of the race on one more tank of fuel. So this is where this is really what the race is going to be. Owen Blythe now has completely clear air ahead of him. He's made that pass on the German, and now he just has to put his head down and lap as quickly as he possibly can to put himself into a position to make up what is about a 4-second gap between himself and Mike Skeppers for that win. And Skeppers still with damage to the front of the end of that Ford GT, and it doesn't look like much damage, but when you are working with cars that are as aerodynamically advanced as these are, even just a scratch on the paintwork at the front of the car can be like a parachute coming down these long straights, the mountain straight and the Conrad straight.
And he's done, you know, and what you see with these high-tech cars, you know, especially in real life, not as much in sim cars, but you know, with these high-tech cars, still the greatest tool is duct tape, you know, and WD-40. You know, that those are the most important tools, you know. Does it move? Yes. Should it? No. Then it's duct tape. You know, you know, and vice versa. If it doesn't move and it should, then it's WD-40. Those are the two rules.
If it moves, duct tape it. If it doesn't move, use a hammer, and if it squeaks, use WD-40.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's just
or turn up the radio.
it's amazing. You know, I remember at Le Mans had one year when, you know, one of these extremely expensive, I think it was a Porsche, you know, had a dent in the door, and you know, it's an expensive race car, and the guy just came out with a sledgehammer and just, you know, took those you know, dents out of the door, and then it could close again and go on.
Indeed, and it's amazing how with damage, these incredibly advanced cars that are massaged and perfectly engineered for maximum speed, once you get to the damage part, it really does digress into a 15-year-old kid in the back of his dad's garage whacking on it with a hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
So to update this battle for a little bit, the battle has really remained stationary for the most part. 4.4 seconds, almost exactly the gap between Mike Skeppers and Owen Blythe. Currently, as Blythe goes into quarry this time, we see 6th place Dennis Meisner, who we saw make that mistake that ended up costing the lead for the German driver. He has now gone into the pits, so this is where we're going to see these drivers start to dive into the pit lane. Probably we'll see all of them within the next 3 minutes or so, approaching an hour out of an hour and 20 minutes. So we've already had nearly 60 minutes elapsed in this race. Looks like Meisner, the only one into the pit lane so far, an 8.6 second pit stop for him. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see that climbing time to the left-hand side is the total time on the pit lane. The time within the brackets for those watching is the pit stop time, for those who find that information interesting. Now, what confused me earlier, and understandably can be confusing for some of those watching, in the background just behind Owen Blythe, that is not Mike Skeppers. That is his Venom Ultima teammate, Andy Gorton, who is unfortunately a lap down after a mistake in turn 2 of lap 1 into quarry. Took a little bit too much of the curb on the right-hand side, ended up getting clipped in the back by, that was not Tristan Koenig, that was Marvin Sluman, who made that contact there, as we now see.
Ooh, Van Eyck.
Oh, what a save!
Wow,
That was an incredible
that's a
by
brown
Van
pants
Eyck. Well
moment.
done.
That is a brown pants
Oh,
moment
we
right
got
there.
on board for that.
Oh yeah, let's see if we can.
Absolutely great job there by Van Eyck, doing a spectacular job saving it in basically. It's hard enough to do this corner normally. It looks like he actually turned it a little bit too early, clipped the inside of the wall, and a great save there by Cohen Van Eyck to keep that car straight and continue to try to chase down that car ahead of him.
That's difficult to do. Unfortunately, in the 12-hour of Bathurst in a GT3, had a similar thing happening to me. I just were on the outside of the curb when I had it, and hit the curb so hard that I flew over the curb, and when I hit the grass and gravel, that was actually after I hit the wall first. So our car kind of went into flames, and we went out in a blaze of glory. But that right there for Van Eyck is definitely a new set of pants after this race. And that is what you have when you really make a good save around here. You need for a longer race a new set of pants every time you're driving here, because these kind of mistakes will kind of happen. And Van Eyck is having a car with a bit of battle scars around it, and I think almost all the cars except maybe Blythe and Selesnev have a bit of war paint going on. But then again, they are really good to us with just having white walls, so a lot of the drivers kind of want to paint over on those walls, so that's a good thing.
It's hard to do when you have that rather brightly branded Corvette C8R like Selesnev has here.
But that's the thing.
Have a rather decent race, do a really good job here.
Yeah, but that's the thing about your because there's no hiding that you have designed the V3 racing car. Why did you decide to go with a white car when we needed to paint all the white walls? That is on you,
well,
mate. That is on you.
The fact was purple and red, but in honor of the third year of the V3 racing program, decided to go with a gold, silver, white, and black livery. Looks pretty clean out there on track, if I do say so myself, as Owen Blythe continues to lose ground to Mike Skepper's 3/10 since the last time we discussed. So now 4.7 seconds, the gap between the two of them. So they continue to battle it out. Now we see Dennis Cotier, the leader in the AM category in the Porsche 911 RSR. He's coming to the pit lane. As we see maybe a little bit of a scratch against the wall there for Owen Blythe, completely maximizing every single corner as much as he can, gets out to the wall as far as he can every single corner in order to really just keep as much speed in that car as he possibly can. We're now looking at Victor Mateos, the Spanish driver, number 204 in one of the two Hyperion Racing Porsches. His teammate, who he was battling with a little bit earlier, ended up retiring. It was Chris Yardley in the other of the Hyperion Racing Porsches, as we ride on board with him with that loud flat V6 down behind the rear axle of that vehicle. That screaming from the back of the engine certainly can't beat that sound in terms of sheer driving, ear porn, for lack of a better term.
That's true. That is true. It's just, it sounds so amazing. Oh, as we are having another incident, apparently. Let's see. This is Dennis. Has Dennis? I think he has lost it again.
Oh, not again.
Oh, that's a bit later.
At least he lost it in a slightly better place.
Yeah. It's really a difficult corner the way that it is, because you are really pushing on the throttle to get it out there, and it just seems like he's not having a great time with that Corvette out there.
Yeah, no, that he was doing a great job a little bit earlier. He was up inside the top 3 at one point, but has since been relegated back off the lead lap of the category and all the way back into 6th place in class. Luckily, because of how few entries we've actually had for this race, he hasn't really fallen outside of the top 15 or so. We're now looking at Leonard Graf, currently scored in the second position in the number 310 Porsche. He is not just about 7.6 seconds behind the class leader. So that's actually 2 Porsches leading the AM category. And we've seen Baka Gabrielson fall back in his Hyperion Ferrari. He's now back to the 4th position as Thomas Kuhn has slowly clawed his way up into the top 3 in class. That's yet another podium for the V3 Racing driver who we've seen continue to just be consistent lap after lap after lap, and actually not too much of a gap between himself and Graf ahead as Graf comes into the pit lane. So too does Victor Mateos. Mateos actually coming out of the pit lane, so we'll see if they end up pushing that fuel strategy. You can hear the the pit horn indicating that Mateos is now leaving the pit lane. You see him going back onto the mountain straight. That Corvette the Porsche V6 engine pushing him up the hill. Now, speaking of the Corvette C8,
did you just say Porsche V6?
Flat 6. That's what my brain meant.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, you said you were about to say flat, and then you decided to say V, and it's like everybody
are in the pit lane. The leaders have entered the pit lane. Oleksiy Seleznev now inherits the lead as we see Mike Skeppers lock the brakes up coming into his pit stall. Owen Blythe now follows him just behind, having qualified in the 3rd position. So those two nose to tail on the pit lane. Gunners Rasgals currently scored in the 3rd position in the Pro-Am category. The Latvian driver in the Burgundy BMW M8. Now we see Blythe spin the tires on his way out of the pit lane. Let's see how far the gap is now when he gets out of the pit lane. I think Skeppers may have absolutely kicked his ass on at pit lane. 3 seconds now, how much the gap has grown by since they came into the pit lane. Something seriously went wrong for Owen Blythe on that stop. We'll have to see how long that stop was for him. We now look on board with Oleksiy Seleznev, the privateer entry. Did he perhaps make a mistake here? Or he's... Oh, that's a difficult place right there. That's an unfortunate place to lose the car. Absolutely.
He saved it. And that right there is from the lead.
That is, in fact, for the lead currently, and for the lead in class as well.
That's not anything that's gonna help you, negotiate a new contract with the tires. They are not gonna be happy with you after that.
I think the tire contract has been long gone for some of these drivers, especially somebody like our good German friend Mike. Earlier in the race, before that damage that he got, we were seeing him lock up in almost every corner coming down the mountain. So he and those Michelin racing slicks are not on good terms at the moment.
But he's at the moment only 3 seconds behind Owen, so there could still be a battle for the overall podium in going on here. He's only 11 seconds behind Skeppers, but I don't think he's going to be able to catch him.
Well, I apologize. I have to believe that gap has closed only because of a slow pit stop from Owen Blythe, at least 3 seconds slower. Because now looking at the timing sheets, he's continuing to pull away.
It's also the POD that is gonna be a power of duct tape. That is probably what we are seeing as well. Is Owen Blythe going? No, he's keeping on. Okay, I was just looking at it. Looked like on the overlay like he was in the pits. I was like, what is going on here? No,
well, has just been. So that is the lead. He's actually lost a good bit of track position here. He better get off of pit lane quickly, or Gunners Rasgals will be right on top of him, trying to take away that second position in class. And actually, Seleznev has lost. I think Seleznev was actually right behind Mike for the final podium position overall, and has in fact lost that on that last pit stop. We see him coming through the cutting now, as Owen Blythe is a good bit ahead of him, but Mike Skeppers continues to overcome that damage on the front end of his Ford GT, and now 12 seconds the gap between them. As we approach the final 10 minutes of the race, we'd like to ask those of you watching through the stream on YouTube to throw into chat some nominations for Driver of the Race. This has certainly been an interesting one. I certainly would put it between Skeppers and Blythe for first of all, the absolute consistency that we've seen out of Blythe. No mistakes from the V3 Racing driver, and through the tenacity and perseverance of Skeppers, despite that front-end damage, continuing to push that car as hard as possible to maintain the lead. Again, some front-end damage to the right front of the splitter of the 911 RSR. That is Dennis Cotier from the Netherlands, number 316 privateer entry. He, in fact, is leading the AM category. This is the first time we've seen him lead in AM, and actually looks like Thomas Kuhn has made his way up into second position, so he's made the pass on Baka Gabrielson, or actually maybe that was a mistake.
That's no. Kuhn has still a pit stop to go.
So he has stayed out as we see Cohen Van Eyck come now to the pit lane. He is currently scored 6th in class, or 5th, I should say. 6th is yet another lap down from him. So he certainly is not at any sort of danger. That is Dennis Meisner, who we saw make some contact with the leaders not too long ago after an unfortunate mistake. Now we're looking at Anthony Gorton, teammate to Mike Skeppers. He is a lap down to the leaders and, in fact, to the car ahead. So despite Cohen Van Eyck being in the pits, Andy Gorton will not gain any positions from that. He's just been riding around trying to make up as much track position as he can. And it's impressive. Almost no damage to that car, despite the mistake that was made earlier. He probably came into the pit lane and got that fixed, and that's how he lost a lap to our leaders. But certainly an unfortunate end to the day for the second of the Venom Ultima cars that could have had a really strong performance today.
Yeah, Gordon did not look impressive in qualifying, and he has had some lackluster performance this season, to be honest. Gordon, a couple of seasons ago, were definitely the Ford driver up in between the BMWs and stuff like that, and he was always fighting for the podiums and stuff like that. So it has been a little bit of a lackluster performance as we're just now riding on board with Mike, and he's, as you said, actually losing a bit of time to Bly. So that car is still feeling the effects of answering wrong to the question of, does my ass look fat in these pants? They had the
age-old question.
The age-old question, and you can only go wrong. And if we can actually just try, if I can try and see if I can see it up here, was it? If I can find it again, just for maybe the new viewers who are questioning what are we talking about? Here Dennis Meister just losing it here, and at this point you can't see, and there we had the two leaders just crashing into him, and there's nothing that they could do.
And Blythe even came through there, was pretty close to potentially making some contact. Dennis was very clever to keep that Wraith Energy racing car, and actually it looks like he made contact with Selesnev, so Selesnev ended up making contact as well, and there's just nothing you could do there with a car at that position on the track. You really can't see anything. That's just a blind corner.
It is, and having cars spinning around there, and you don't know when you hit them. You're like, what did I hit? Because that's how fast it's going. You have no idea what is going on, and with the walls being so close, if you try to avoid them, then you're just gonna crash straight into the walls, because you're so committed around here. Every single corner you're fully committed to, otherwise you will lose too much time. But if you overcommit, and go over the line, you will have an argument with the wall, and you will lose it. And also, as we're seeing here, we're seeing a lot of grass as well, or ice painted as grass in iRacing. If you hit that, you will again get a one-way ticket to a wall. So it's really, really difficult, as we're seeing Broomfield getting closer and closer and closer to Victor Mateus. So this is a battle for position, and this is battle for P5, as Mateus is just showing and not going in here, and now they're getting their fight up onto the mountain.
Absolutely, and this is actually the closest battle that we currently see on track heading into the cutting. Oh, and that looks like they've made the move there. There's side by side coming through up the hill towards Sulman Park. Oh, that is going to be tight there. Absolutely no room for error, and Broomfield has made the move. He's gone through, coming into Sulman Park here. The compression to the right-hand side. gets as close as he can to the right-hand side, heading into the Philomene Park. That wall on the right, ever so menacing as they throw those cars through there. With how warm the tires are, they're probably flat out through there. Now down through the S's, and that really is a solidly well done job as he now pulls away 0.5 of a second. The gap between the two of them now coming down towards Forrest's elbow rather rapidly.
Yeah, and this battle is, keeping on. I think Mateus just decided that, he did not have the pace. Brumfield really closed up that gap quite with quite a lot the last couple of laps, and Mateus is a driver who thinks about his driving and thinks, is this battle really one that I can win? And if not, if I just let him by, I'm not having the issue of maybe having a crash and stuff like that. He's thinking forward. He's thinking about championships, and just keeping it clean out there. And Brumfield, if for whatever reason is down to P5, he have looked strong all race long. So he really won up there, and he's actually behind our leader in the A class, Mr. Katya here. And Katya, we have Porsche in P1 in and then we have a Ferrari and a Porsche on P3. So this would actually be, I think, the first class podium without a BMW, Ford, or Corvette.
Indeed, and actually to the front of the field, with Ford, Corvette, BMW, and then the first of the Porsches. Certainly far and away the best performance we've seen from any of the Porsches thus far, and it's been until week 6 of the season for them to finally get a proper balance of performance adjustment to make them more competitive with these drivers. First, you see Leonard Graff not too far behind our overall leader, but that gap for the league continues to grow and grow and grow between Skeppers and Blythe. It's now well over 7 seconds, the gap between the two of them.
Yeah, we have hyped the battle up a little bit. This is we have hyped it up as rain in Formula 1. It's wasn't really on the table. Bly is not really battling the pro drivers, so there's no incentive for him to really push, as we're just seeing him almost decided to paint the wall there. He is going flat out, but he's not really battling the guys up there. So impressive for him to be second overall and not really getting pushed from behind, although Gordon is getting closer and closer, but he's a lap down, so that could be a driver that he will just be like, all right, get by, get on with it, crash in a little bit, and we will see you at the finish line.
For sure, and I'm sure with the difference in pace, Owen Blythe will be crossing his fingers and hoping that he will see a mistake from Mike Skeppers or from somebody around him that can possibly take him out for him. But we very seldom see mistakes out of the Dutch driver that currently leads the field, as he comes around to complete lap 39 and start lap 40, or I should say complete 38 and start 39, with now under 3 minutes remaining. So we should see the next lap be the white flag for these drivers. Just a few more laps remaining. We've currently gotten through an hour and 17 minutes of an hour and 20. Amazing how quickly the racing goes, how quick the race goes when the racing is ever so close as it has been, especially at the front of the field today.
Yeah, definitely. And also again, you talked about, let's get some names in for driver of the day out there. I will actually, because now normally you ask me about this, and I will actually ask you, who are your driver of the day? Who for you is the king of the mountain?
It would be very close between Blythe and Skeppers, but I really do have to give it to Mike Skeppers, because most people, after getting that much damage, and as you can even see as he comes down the mountain, the curved in that he has on the front nose of that normally that normally outwardly curved front end. I mean, most people would have come into the pits and fixed it and just been frustrated, let it get them off their game. But Skeppers continued to be tenacious and persevere and put that Venom Ultima 196 into the perfect position to end up winning the race overall and not end up handing it to a Pro-Am, which would be the first time in my history broadcasting this series that I would see a Pro-Am take the overall win. It certainly looked like it was possible, but now it looks like Skeppers has just completely turned on the afterburners despite that damage. So for the sake of his, I mean, here at Bathurst, damage is almost imminent, almost assumed, and he has done the best job of any driver that I've seen of managing it and continuing to use what he has left in that car to basically as much of an advantage as he can, as he now beats Blythe by another 0.6 that lap around and continues to grow that gap, which is now up to 8.8 seconds.
Yeah, you know, he's done a great race. For me, it's Dennis. You know, getting your first win in the AM class. He has kept out of problems which a lot of the other AMs have had. He's at the moment leading his class by 34 seconds, which is quite a lot. He has been stellar out there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that might be more of a gap than Van Eyck had at Sebring not too long ago.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the thing. He's been getting your first victory in here is difficult. Winning in the AOR is not something that you just do, because the quality of drivers is really high. We, you know, as we look at the strength of field just before Skeppers is actually getting here, you know, the Pro is 4.3k, Pro Am is 3.1, and Am is 2k iRating. That's the average between all of the drivers as we're seeing Skeppers getting in here. So there's a lot of drivers as but yeah, again, join if you want. We wanna get more drivers in here, because there's always somebody that you can fight, as we are now getting to the checkered flag.
So after an hour and 20 minutes, Mike Skeppers from the Netherlands, the Venom Ultima number 196, takes his third victory in a row in the Apex Online Racing GTE League. We now look back just a little bit further to Owen Blythe, who will come home in the second position. A great performance from the V3 Racing Black driver, who has now come across the line, and Mike, our good German friend, has done a spectacular job of recovering from that damage for a podium spot. Certainly not anything to be too disappointed about. I mean, the potential was there absolutely for a win for him, but considering that damage, nothing to have your head down about if you are the German driver from Fuga Simsport.
No, but he will be disappointed, I think, with himself, because a win were definitely in the cards, but we did see Mike Skeppers really piling on the pressure after the first pit stop. So I think it was just a matter of time, but you know, having it being decided by hitting a slower car is a little bit, you know, you have a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth after that, because it was not down to you or your mistake, but the place where Dennis were, there was no way that either of them were able to see him, and there was no way for Dennis to get out of the way. So it's just, you know, really, really bad luck, as we're seeing Broomfield getting across the finish line, getting into that P5, and we are just waiting on Victor Mateus and now actually Gabrielson in the Ferrari, who will take a number P2 in the AM category.
And that is certainly an impressive performance from him. We've seen him fluctuate up and down the field. Maybe that was somewhat a consequence of pit strategy, but for him to come home with a P2 finish, certainly nothing for him to hang his head about. Does an amazing job. And Dennis Cartier, of course, coming home with the win in the AM category, doing a great job. So in just a moment's time, we should have our results up for you.
They are in.
Excellent. Let me bring those up for us. Now, assuming I have done this right, let us see.
You click on the results button and you will get the results.
Excellent.
See,
So,
I can irritate you because, I know you have cocked up in it, so.
Well, now we will look at the Pro Series standings. Mike Skeppers in the Venom Ultimate number 196 will take away the lead from Alex Bennett, who has missed his second race in a row with the Comrade Gaming Black BMW. So those two positions have switched. Andy Gorton maintains his position third on the charts for Venom Ultimate with 83 points, and a big gap back to Martin Nadalik, who has withdrawn from the series. Pretty good performance from Mike, who in the Fuga SimSport number 122 is now up to the 5th position and certainly has a good shot at a top 3 finish by season's end by virtue of Alex Bennett and Martin Nedelic withdrawing. Now, if we go down to our Pro-Am standings, in Pro-Am, Owen Blythe has taken away the lead. He's jumped 3 positions by winning this race. 71 points for him, 3 points back to Gunners Rascals, the 220 Phoenix Racing Club Eggshell. And then his teammate, Kevin Olk, in the 264 is only about 9 points back from that. Lesky Selesnev has actually made a nice jump up there, up 2 positions with 58 points, so only a point separating himself from the top 3. Then if we go down to our AM category standings, Thomas Kuhn currently leads the points by 20 points, a big margin for the V3 Racing Gold driver. Cohen Van Eyck, after some bad luck last week, losing the win to Thomas by virtue of running out of fuel towards the end of the race, he has 80 points, only a 3-point lead over third place Jamie Smith, so he's actually swapped spots with Jamie Smith there. And Gabrielson has jumped up a place and is now only 4 points away from the overall podium, as we see Dennis Cotier actually celebrating there on the front straightaway. Good for him, and certainly awesome to see him get his first win. Any final thoughts from you, Nick, before we close out the broadcast?
Well, it was a great race, and we did see a lot of cars hitting the walls, as I did predict. It's a little bit of a shame that we don't have more drivers on at the moment, and we have been talking about that for quite a while, also behind the scenes. So, but the quality of drivers that we have is definitely amazing, and we have some of the greatest drivers and a great community out here. And that just showed again here tonight. An amazing race and a track that I was like, I would really have loved to drive on. I love Bathurst. And I hope that some of the viewers out there who, might be looking or at maybe, either joining the AOR, hopefully, or just, enjoying watching the race, maybe have not raced at Bathurst themselves, try and get out there and get a couple of laps. It's an amazing track, and I think a lot of the drivers will tell you the same.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It was a spectacular race at a spectacular race track. So, without further ado, we'd like to thank you all for joining us on the Apex Online Racing network of channels on YouTube. For myself, Brayden Hill, and my co-commentator, Niclas Domino, again, we'd like to thank you for joining us and can't wait to see you next week at the same time. Next Monday night. And I think that's a good place to close. So, for myself and Nick, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful week.
See you there.